Hello, we are back with episode 3, Historical Tarot, Manifesting with Tarot, and we have Anne here with us. She is
Hi,
a
everyone.
historian. Hi. And she's going to do what we've done in the last 2 episodes, bring history into tarot to show us how these archetypes will show up for us or have shown up for us in the past, and maybe give you a bigger picture of what the cards represent. So tonight we are doing the Knights of Tarot. And these are my favorite, actually, when doing readings as well. So we're on the wrong slide. I knew I was going to do that. I do want to start with the Knights. To me are call to action in tarot. So these cards here, when you're doing a reading, really will, depending on where you place them in the reading, to really give you the what's really kind of the meat of what's going on. If you pull the Knights, you know something's moving. You know you can see where something's going or where something's not really going. So I do feel like we'll get a lot out of this episode. We do have the first Knight, which is the Knight of Cups. And Mr. Romantic, Mr. Charmin, Mrs. Charmin, however you want to look at it. Everybody loves seeing the Knight of Cups come into a reading. This often represents new love, messages of love, somebody who wears their heart on their sleeve, very charming, watery energy. So it could be Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio. Now, I know when you're learning tarot, and if you learn the traditional way, there's going to be a lot of different ways you can learn tarot. And some teachers will say, there's certain signs, only one sign or this, because they don't want to bring in too many characteristics. But I tend to go with the energy of it, and we'll use the signs just for the readings I do on YouTube. So the Knight of Cups, I use as general Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio energy, just when people want to know a sign. But it really is just a romantic energy. And the Knights in general, to me, are all kind of passionate and fiery in their own ways. And so I look at them more as elements and not just water, even though it shows up as a watery energy. They're very ambitious, and with the Knight of Cups, they're going off of feelings, and so they know what they want through feelings. They feel something, and they can fall in love quick. They're usually the ones that'll tell you "I love you" right away too, and So when we see the dreamer, when we see the poet, the lover, the kind of really creative soul in your life, or the energy in your life, this is the Knight of Cups. And depending on which position I pull it in a reading, will tell me whether it's the actual person coming towards you, whether it's your energy, or whether it's the energy around the entire reading. So it's really important to know where this card, know the question you're asking when you pull in any card, to be general. I mean, in general, but especially with the Knights, because it's not always a person coming into your life, but it definitely does represent, it could represent, like I said, new love. What else? We have the reverse. Sorry, we haven't done this in a couple of weeks, trying to get back into the grind of it. But we have, again, the negative qualities of, water energy, which is, could be like we have self-sabotage, lack of focus, and emotional and creative blocks, and unrealistic views, and very immature, and moodiness. And so this here, am I talking about manifesting now? I think we talked about that. We're going to talk about, I'm using it as when I'm looking at a reading and I see the Knight of Cups come in, I can see whether you're in love with somebody, or you're driven by your feelings, you're driven by love. And so if this will show up, if somebody is in lust or love, usually lust will come up with the wands, but we'll get there. But when this one comes up, usually tells me you really are in love with somebody. And there's a lot of romantic feelings around. If I get this in reverse when manifesting, though, it tells me that you're reaching again, or you're emotionally unbalanced, and you're not really feeling into what's going on. And it could be telling me that too, that you're not really feeling into what it is you really want, and you're you're looking for somebody else to fill your void, and you have a lack of focus, emotional attachment to something, and it's holding you back and creating resistance from manifesting. So it's really important. The thing is the emotional part of manifesting can be the toughest. In the upright position, if you can get in tune with your feelings, and if you really believe and you can feel into what you're manifesting, remember the Knights are a call to action. So it will be telling me that you really need to feel and believe it's true. But if it's in reverse and it's a call to action, it's asking you to bring yourself into balance, because you cannot manifest by having an attachment to something, and without balancing your own emotions with your, with your thoughts. So that is one of the hardest ones too, I think, is the feelings thing, because people get confused with feelings, and then they get caught up in their feelings, and then they try to manifest, and then when they're trying to stay true to their manifestations and trying to stay in the end game, they get caught up in their emotional blocks, and they get attached to what they want so much that they end up creating more resistance to their manifestation. And then it starts to become, I've got to have, I need, if I don't have this, and then it becomes a lot of suffering and pain, and it's one of the biggest blocks in manifesting, I believe. So any questions today? You were muted.
Sorry, I was muting because I don't want the echoing to happen. So in terms of the Knights, what I wanted to add is just that the Knights to me are exactly how you're explaining them. And I love how every reader has a different way to look at the cards in general, but it seems like in the Knights that you see the most different approach, where Knights definitely seem to signify some sort of action or initiation is happening. And then, you get this emotion or this element attached to it. And I feel like when people just look at the cards as, okay, the Knight of Cups, a Cancer or Scorpio is coming towards you, or whatever it is, it doesn't allow you to work with the energy as well, right? It's like it becomes shorthand for you. You might have a question as somebody who's watching, and you want to know about a particular person, but maybe what the cards are telling you also is you need to embody these qualities, or maybe there's something you're not noticing that is like these characteristics. And so that's what to me is useful about thinking of the Knights as more than just archetypes.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, as I was thinking of the Knights, because I had to wrap my head around what the energy was before I chose the people, the historical individuals that we'll be talking about today, that I really started thinking, when somebody hears Knight, it's like it's loaded with expectation, because I think we're all familiar with the Knights, coming to rescue people in fairy tales, or the charming Knight, or the dark Knight, or the Knights of the Round Table, and we think of archetypes and not real people. So that's what I was hoping to do with the people that we chose to, or that I chose today, and that we talked about, is to get like a handle on what is the Knight in the 3D, right?
Yeah.
What are the characteristics that we either want to embody if we're manifesting, or that we want to work with in some way, or if we're even just looking for, who is this Knight of Cups coming towards me? What are the qualities? We can think about it in the people that we're going to look at right now. And of course, I always choose kind of characters who are at 100, as we were pointing out last time, right?
I like the hundreds. I like the 0 to 100s.
Right. So they're gonna, and all these people will have the upright and reversed qualities. Probably some of them will have more of one or the other. So
and I think you just kind of said it, kind of what I was saying too. And it's like because of YouTube, I think in the way we have generalized tarot so much, because I'm doing general readings for so many people, it's easy to see a knight, and a lot of people know in their cards when they come to the readings, and they're like, oh, the knight, oh, he's coming toward, you know, it's always they're coming toward, they see the knight, they feel, but they're not looking at the call to action is for them as well too, and depending on which position it is in, you know, just if I pull it and it's in your position, and I can say the sign, and the person might automatically think, oh, that's my person, that, oh, they're coming towards me, but no, it's in your position. So it's call to action for you, you know, and it's like really looking at what you need to do in order for this to come. But it's been so generalized, and the knight is also, you know, like it's quickly looked at like, oh, you know, like the Knight of Wands, Knight of Cups, all of them, like somebody's coming to us, this is working, and it's an energy. It's not always a person. It's just not, right? And so you said the same thing. I think I'm just kind of covering again what you were saying, and I'm hoping that people understand that. And I think that's another thing I was trying to figure out what I was struggling with here, because, you know, we were talking about the way we did tarot spreads and the way you and I would do it when we're practicing. And I think that's what, you know, stemmed from our conversation last night was, it's when you're doing quick readings and you're doing general readings for a large community, like you generalize, and people only pick up what they want to hear, you know. And it's like, and then with manifesting, add manifesting on it, and trying to teach people how I pick up on that intuitively, the energy through manifesting. How am I going to explain that to other people? Like when I see these cards, what it's telling me, you know? So that's
well, yeah. And remember too, we were talking about, you know, our first decks, and when we started doing tarot as, you know, teenagers or whenever it was. Do you remember in all the books when, you know, you always started with the Celtic cross, and then it would always say, choose the Page of Wands or the Knight of Wands or the King, like for you, your signifier card. And so it's almost that, like that style that a lot of people learned with, it kind of takes the magic out of the card, because you already just choose it and put it in the spread, and you assume you know what it means. And what I think is exciting about thinking about it in this way, or the way that you do this in the way you read tarot, is that you allow the knights to come to you, or you figure out where they are in the world.
Yes. And that's one of the most important things. And so I, over the years, have learned that while I'm doing tarot intuitively, I go and I look up, like for the longest time, I kept saying the Fool kind of reminds me of Aquarius too, right? I never understood why I kept saying that. I was like, oh man, I see the Fool. I know it's it's Aries. And then I'm like, but wait a minute, it reminds me, and I've said it in my lives a lot. I'm like, oh, it reminds me of Aquarius, because it's almost like rebellious freedom, going exploring. And I don't know, it was just something that intuitively came to me. And then finding out recently that it's ruled by Uranus. You know what I mean? The card. So it's like, if you're really truly in tune and you're letting the cards read to you, you don't have to know every single detail, but you open your mind to allow the cards to speak to you, and you're getting those things. You're getting that information. You don't have to know every detail about a card to feel it. And that's, to me, has been a blessing for me. You know, because if I would have constantly read or knew every single detail about every card, it puts you in your logic mind. It makes you try to decipher things like a puzzle, and then you don't get the answer, because your answer comes right away. Even if you pull 5 cards and you get a quick answer and you can't interpret everything, you get your answer. But if you start trying to dive deeper, your ego is starting to take over, and you're trying to look for what you want, or you're looking for something, and you just start building off of, and it's not intuitive. Right. And for people who understand the history and all this, and they've been doing tarot for years and years and years, yeah, I'm sure it's a creative way to do it. But I'm learning that it doesn't matter. There's so many ways to connect the cards, and they all come together, and just the basic meanings themselves are, you just feel the card and read the card. So,
Yeah, I love that. Great. So should we move to the first person?
yes.
So, I love it. So Knight of Cups, romantic, dreamer, all these things. And then the picture is a sniper and a woman, right? So I chose this individual, Ludmila Pavlichenko, otherwise known as Lady Death, because she embodies so much about this Knight of Cups energy. Um, Obviously, we're not saying that if you draw the Knight of Cups, a sniper's coming into your life, right? But there is so much about her story that is emotional. She was a Cancer. And she was a very famous sniper during World War II in the Soviet Union. And she lived at a time and in a place where women were getting more opportunities. It was under a communist state that she was young. And so there was a lot of this understanding about women needing to be able to do more, and that a communist perspective was going to have a different idea about gender, and that it would be okay for a woman to do things like joining the military. Whereas in the West, at the same time, there wasn't as much flexibility about gender roles. But what is interesting about her is that she still faced adversity. So when she was growing up, her neighbor was involved in a shooting club, and she wanted to get involved in it, and so she started to do it. And her neighbor was a boy, and she wanted to also become a marksman, and she started to develop that ability and became an expert shooter. So when World War II started, she wanted to contribute because that was her biggest gift, or that was her biggest talent, that she felt she could contribute the most. When she went to sign up, they tried to route her into nursing. Well, you're a woman, so you should go into nursing. But she held out, and she did end up going into the military and was a sniper. And there were also many other women who did this as well. But the reason we remember her is because she was the best of, I mean, not just women snipers, but of many other snipers. She had 309 total confirmed kills during the war, and she was finally injured when she was 25. There was a mortar that went off near her, and shrapnel went into her face, and she was okay. She recovered, and she wanted to go back into the war. But at that point, the state wanted to use her for more, propagandistic reasons, to have her go around and do a tour of the United States to try to advocate for the United States going in and opening a second front. So she was used to go around and sort of drum up interest in the Soviet Union and going in to try to protect or to help them in the war against Germany by opening up this second front. So she has been remembered as really kind of a strict, solemn sniper, precise shooter. So she would almost seem like she'd be a perfect Knight of Swords. But what's interesting about her is biographers have said, well, she rarely ever talked about her emotional side. And when I read her story, I only see the emotional side because, if you know somebody who is a lot of water energy, they don't often share the deep emotions that are going on inside of them, but you can see from their actions how they're motivated by their deep passions and their emotions. So, for example, she's motivated to defend her state from a very emotional place, and having this passion for shooting and wanting to bring that to the war effort. She also was a very passionate individual in terms of who she loved. When she was 15 years old, she had a very passionate romance, and she got pregnant at 15. But that didn't stop her. She actually went to the university, and it was accepted that she had this child, and she continued her training. She's trained in history, so I have to point that out. She went to university for history, but then with the war, she went into the war. And she ended up leaving that guy. But during the war, she met and married another sniper, and they had a very passionate affair as well. But unfortunately, he ended up dying in the war. And she took that on as like this personal vendetta that she was going to kill even more Germans because they had killed her lover, her husband. And so to me, I feel like that's very Knight of Cups, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I chose her as an example of the Knight of Cups energy.
No, and it's like I said this when you showed me early, last night too. Though it's like I can see cancer, like I can, because most cancers I know, it's all water with the Knight of Cups, but hardest shell on the outside, driven. Everything is driven by their emotions and what they're feeling, but yet they have got an outside shell. Like you wouldn't think unless you listen to them, or really like if they do open up and tell you, or you've known them for a while. It's all emotional driven.
And you watch her actions in particular. She came to the United States and did this tour, and she got to know Eleanor Roosevelt because they had stops together where they did these speeches. And she kept in touch with her whole life and was a very good friend of hers. And then on that tour, though, Ludmilla would encounter American reporters who kind of perceived her as having a shell around her, right? And would comment on that. Like journalists commented on, oh, the Soviet uniform isn't as pretty for women as the American uniform is. And you would look nicer if you had less of a, heavy coat around you and a lighter coat with a skirt. And she just looked at people like, what in the world are you talking about? She wasn't fazed with that at all outside, but maybe she was inside. I'm not sure. And then the other interesting thing about her is after the war, she suffered from PTSD and she became an alcoholic. And she died eventually because of side effects of alcoholism. And so again, that's kind of like that part of the Cancerian or water energy, I guess. I'm not saying cancers or water are alcoholics, but
No, but it's the
it's
truth.
like
I mean,
you turn it inwards sometimes, your pain.
yeah, it's
And you're
self-centered.
not always apt to just open up to people because you don't feel like others probably understand your pain, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what, I mean, across the board, Cancer, Pisces, Scorpios. I mean, I think Pisces is a little bit more vulnerable, and will open up a little bit more. But that's the thing. It's like when you're a feeler, or you feelings in your emotional body, lots of times, like, that's why I think creativity. I know you think in musicians, we looking at musicians with a fire sign, right? And they're very sensitive too, but a lot of creatives and musicians are water signs, and even comedians and artists and things like that. It's like you've got to have a way to express yourself, and most people don't understand the depth of what you feel. And because most people don't talk about feelings, and then you've got somebody who needs to but doesn't know how to, or in this case, she actually had to even tuck them even further, being in the military. I mean, the only way you have to numb yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where we've talked about a lot of the musicians, that it's funny, it's not funny, but a lot of musicians that have committed suicide, or actors, are water energy.
Right. Like, I mean, of course, the first person I think of is Robin Williams. I mean,
Yeah.
he was a Cancer, right?
Yeah, Chris Cornell too, I think, was a Cancer as well. We had Pisces we talked about Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, and there's a couple others. I do my like scrolling through at nighttime, sometimes staying up all night watching things. There's a bunch though.
Mm-hmm.
There is a bunch, and it's our emotions. It's our emotions. And that's, that's why it's always about therapy talk. Whenever you're dealing with your emotions, if you're trying to do it yourself, and you can't, it's one of those things where you've got to do stuff to try and bring your emotions back into balance.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody can do that but yourself. Like, you've got to go get you fit. You can't just keep tucking it. You can repress and tuck all you want, but it's either going to eat up at your soul, or, you know, it's just, I don't know. So we could go on a long talk with that, but
Yeah, yeah. But, what's interesting about someone who then falls in the night category is that they're using that pain and anguish or
yes,
emotion, passion to drive them towards a
yes,
goal.
yeah.
So,
And that is true too. That is 100% true. I mean, when you have your emotions behind everything and you want something, you're so passionate about it, yeah, that's how you create. You know,
mhm,
that's how you create such very beautiful, touching things, or how you can fight. You know, and so, and just it's nice to see that you have a female peer soldier doing it too. You know, because that's even um, having to be an emotional person already and then have to be that strong, you know?
mhm.
So,
Yeah. Well, let's go to the next one. So, the first person I thought of when I saw the Knight of Cups was Lord Byron. He was a poet. If people aren't sure or don't know who he is, he was a poet from the Romantic era, um, who is British. He came from a family though. His mom is Scottish. I can't remember. I believe his dad is British or English. But he came from a family in which he had it was an aristocratic family, but it had kind of fallen. So it wasn't as elite. It wasn't as wealthy as a lot of aristocratic families. And he was born in the late 18th century during this era in which they were moving from an era of enlightenment, which was about a lot about reason and science, into an era that was more about feeling. I think we had somebody else that I talked about that was from a similar person from this era, and I can't remember who it was. But since we were talking about an overall romantic era, Lord Byron and his poems came to really represent that era. And so I wanted to talk about him because he is the most well-known cliche. Like if you think of who's a romantic poet, everybody will say Lord Byron. Um, Also, Frankie, I believe that Lord Byron is the poet that Matthew McConaughey was reading in the bathtub in Australia. If you remember that part of the
yeah, I don't. I'll have to check it up now.
well, anyway, read that. So that's really interesting. So there's a connection with was he our King of Cups,
Yes,
right?
he was our king of
Um,
poets.
but the thing with Lord Byron is, while his poetry was really beautiful, when he was fairly young, an uncle died, and it was the Lord Byron of that line. His uncle died, and there wasn't another heir in his direct line. And so the money and lands went to this Lord Byron, to George Gordon Byron. Um, and he became Lord Byron. And he, since he was in this romantic era, he lived large, like he lived life in an extreme, exaggerated way as a romantic hero, but kind of anti-hero as well. He, I've seen people talk about him like the rock star poet, or they've actually compared him to Jim Morrison, who we're going to talk about later. But because he was a celebrity, he became a celebrity. He attracted both men and women. He was very narcissistic in the way that he used his romantic attraction to bring people in and to get what he wanted, and he did not treat people well. Um, and he just lived large. So everything about being somebody who is interested in love affairs, doing what going against the norm, like going with his feeling over anything else, no matter if it made sense or not. He went with his feeling, and he lived so decadently that he ended up alienating his class of people. So he was really kind of shunned from society. He ended up having to travel around Europe because he was not being accepted at home, partly because he did have homosexual affairs. He also had an affair with his half sister, not stepsister. So he also was attracted to some of the choir boys in Cambridge when he was there. I mean, but like 16, 17-year-olds. So it wasn't like young children, right? But he just basically went after whoever he was attracted to, and had hundreds of women who were chasing after him at all times, and all for his poetry that he was writing.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
That sounds, I just didn't mean to cut you off, but like when I'm doing readings too, when I see the Knight of Cups come in, that's something that comes into my mind, consideration. Especially, with a lot of the situations people are bringing up, but it is, they fall in love. They can have, and they always have a muse, and they're always creating something, and a lot of partners and things like that. It's, so the other cards really have to show up and show me that this person is coming in to say, I love you, and this is for long term, or am I coming in to love you because I want to write a poem this weekend, or a song for you?
yeah, that's exactly how he was. Like he had strings of affairs, and also sometimes having affairs at the same time, but he would be with a woman for a few years and then just leave her, whatever it took. Just the worst kind of guy, like that guy who is just telling you everything you want to hear one day, and knows what to tell you, right? Like he's the type of guy who would intuitively know what to say to somebody, and then the next day just turn off the feelings and go, right? He also started to look for more excitement in his life, beyond just affairs, which a lot of times people like that do, like after a while get bored of their ability to conquer people, right? And they're always looking for other ways to channel their passionate interests. And so he went to Italy at a certain point, and Italy was having an independence movement. So he sort of joined up with that. And then he had an affair, of course, that didn't work out. So he had to get out of there. And actually, I think he had a daughter with that woman. And that's a tragic story. He had a daughter that was sent off to a convent because it wasn't convenient for him to have a child. And he would hate the women. After he was with these women, he just would despise them. And so he didn't want the woman to have anything to do with his daughter. So he sent her to a convent to be raised, where she later died, because, she got ill and nobody was really mothering her, right? So then he ended up joining into the Greek revolution movement, and it's like he's often talked about as, he died for Greek independence, but he actually got sick while he was doing that, and he died from an illness while he was in Greece. But he did die young, which I think is interesting too, because I think with the Knights, you see, like you were saying, you see them peak. They hit their peak at a pretty young age, and even if they live longer, they don't really match what they did earlier, or they fade away and kind of just die in obscurity, or sometimes have these tragic deaths too. At least the Knight of Cups do.
Yeah.
So that's Lord Byron.
Lord Byron. All right.
So I don't know if do you want to talk anything else, say anything else about the Cups, Knight of Cups, or are we moving on to the next ones?
Yeah, I think, I said about the manifesting, and how I use it in a reading. And it's kind of the same through all the wands too, because again, like all the wands to me represent ambition and action and going for things. So no, I think I'm ready to move on to the Knight of Wands, because it's the same thing I'm about to talk about. Just very confident, going for it, fireball, adventurous, and they don't waste time. They go. So, and the same thing as the Knight of Cups though too. It's like they can come in pretty quick in a relationship too. And I'm bringing that up because the readings that I do, a lot of people are, talking about, love or what's going on in their life, and so I can pull a Knight of Wands for, either you or your person, but it will show whether you're moving too fast or whether you're trying to get something too fast, or you're restless or being spontaneous, and that can happen more so with the Knight of Wands than it can with the Knight of Cups. I mean, Knight of Cups can fall in love quick, and like you've seen, have multiple partners, but to me, the Knight of Wands they'll come in and they'll be gone the next day. It's like, and that's it. But they'll go after what they want. Once they get it, they're done. You know what I mean? It's like once they can hit their target, that's it. And sometimes it can go too far, and it can be very overbearing or very impatient. So when manifesting and doing tarot, when it's hard to, a lot of people don't want to hear their side of the story, or don't want to hear what's blocking them from not getting what they want, or not getting the reading, or not trying to figure out why they can't manifest into their life. And usually that will be, it's always like, it can be a lot of fire, whereas you're just impatient. You're trying to control the situation by being more aggressive. And then sometimes I like how you put lax follow through here, because that's another one too. You start something so quickly, you want something so badly, and then you either don't follow through with it, or you don't want it when you get it. It's like, it's passion, it's instant, it's impulsive, it's I've got to have it, and then it just becomes all about ego. And so that can really cause resistance. And so when I pull, like I said, when I pull the Knight of Wands, oftentimes in reverse, it'll show somebody, somebody who's could be playing around, somebody who's not into it for commitment, somebody that it's just a sexual relationship, or maybe you got together too quickly, right? You didn't give it time to see if you guys even had the same character, same things in common for the future. And then when I see overbearing, and when I see the Knight of Wands, one of the partners is trying to control the other, or is trying to, or is jealous, or is possessive, or just, it's got to be their way, and that can be a very hard one to deal with as well when you see it in a reading. If somebody's trying to manifest somebody in, and you see that show up, you're like, you either have to take inspired action, right? Not out of fear. You've got to take inspired action to make what you want to come in, manifest what you want to come in. Or you have somebody coming towards you who's very fun, adventurous, ambitious, but, make sure you don't jump into it impulsively. Make sure you have the same shared goals. And also, if it shows up in your position and it's in reverse, are you taking necessary action, or are you, unfocused, scattered energy? Are you impulsive? Are you jealous, possessive, things like that? So again, it's not just a person. Whenever you see this card, it's what you have to hold yourself accountable to. You have to look at yourself and what's going on with you, in order to manifest. So that card to me says a lot. And it depends on if I get, the other cards obviously around it. But with the Knights, I'm just going to keep saying this. It's really important to what position it's coming in. Is it you, or is it your partner, or is it the overall situation? And the next thing is, to obviously confront that, to remove the restrictions and the blocks that you're putting in your way. So.
No,
you see commitment issues too. That was basically what I was saying, commitment issues too.
Right. I think I hear so much about when the Knight of Wands shows up in people's reads. I always, like, the next thing is, the Knight of Wands, hang on. He's going to come and sweep you off your feet and then be gone, right?
Yeah.
But I kind of think, if you're asking about a project, for example, or a new direction, I think it's a really great thing to see the Knight of Wands, right? Because it's going to be that there will be this movement and a spark of energy that comes in and gets it going, right? Or maybe you do need to embody charisma in order to level up or something, right? Or to get closer to your goal. So I really, I like the idea of thinking of the Knight of Wands in a positive way, because I think it really does get talked about as this shady character a lot of the times.
It does, and he does, and I mean the Knight of Wands does, and and when I'm doing personal readings or doing readings for remember, I'm a manifesting coach, so I'm always doing the coaching behind it with it too. So, but if working with career and things like that, the Knight of Wands is a good one to work with, because it tells me a lot. But when it comes to relationships and the readings that we do for the general that people come for on most tarot channels, it's like you see that Knight of Wands in reverse. It tells you straight up, kind of, it's not the best energy. It's not the best energy. And most of the time, the viewer, the querent, they know it. And it can be their energy too as well. So my job is to just kind of look at it and say, all right, well, what are we going to do with this now? You know it's there, you're agreeing, you resonate with it. And the thing is it's situationships, it's these kind of relationships people are getting into, but then they want to manifest it to be something more long term. And that's what I'm always up against. Okay, so you started off friends with benefits, you started off situationship, you started off in these kind, but now in order to manifest, you've got to turn that, and you got to turn that around, and you've got to shift your storyline here. But it's like it's that's where it's these kind of talk. It's my reads. Basically, people will say they're coming for career, but they're coming for love, and that's how the Knight of Wands always shows up. And if I were to do a reading, which I do love doing on career and things like that, and I see the Knight of Wands, it's asking you to be confident. It's asking you to step up and take inspired action. It's asking you to be driven, follow your passions, get going, is this what you want? Go for it. And don't give up, because that's the awesomeness about the fire energy is, they're going to go for it. They're going to get it done. But yeah, that's just the way you see it the most in live readings.
All right, well, let's go to the historical people here.
There must be my man.
So our first
in art class. It's funny. When my best friend in high school, we were in art together, and we used to draw constantly. I would draw Lenny Kravitz. He was my guy, and I loved Jim Morrison too. But at the time, I had a huge crush on Lenny Kravitz, and she was in love with Jim Morrison, but she couldn't get his lips right, and only I could. So every time she drew portraits of Jim Morrison, all her portraits have I did his lips. I perfected his lips. Yeah,
well, I mean, and his lips make him, right?
Oh,
I mean, the lips are the most important thing.
His lips are like, he's just. My other best friend went to France, brought me back a picture from his tomb. Yeah,
I had to include that because, I mean, so I went to college and I toured through Europe with somebody who was a Jim Morrison fanatic. And I mean, similarly, I was not really ever into Jim Morrison like she was, or the Doors. But I mean, she was so into it. And, this is why you know what? I left the wrong dates under him. Ignore the dates because he is a Sagittarius. I don't know if you can go and delete that really fast so it's not.
No, it's all right.
People.
Just ignore the dates.
Yeah, that's from somebody from the last time. So anyway, he is none of those things, or he is a Taurus moon and a Sagittarius sun. That's why I thought of him. And oh my goodness, what is his rising? I know he has his midheaven in Scorpio. And so if you're quick, you can figure out what the rising is from that. Because I thought, having a midheaven in Scorpio is perfect for him, because that's kind of what he was living in, but he was doing it in that Knight of Wands way. So he was so influenced by poetry. And I mean, the name of the band, The Doors, comes from a William Blake poem, I believe, if I'm remembering it correctly. And, he thought of himself as a poet more than a rock star, but he got caught up in being a rock star. But he was just the type of person who always pushed boundaries. I mean, he grew up in a family with a Navy admiral as his father, and they moved a lot. He was arrested 6 times in his life, just sort of either being drunk and disorderly, or just deciding he needed to push the boundaries of wherever he was. He was just really the epitome of a rebellious individual, and somebody who had romantic passions, I guess, of what he wanted to do and the kinds of things he wanted to pursue, and he went after them, right? He started college, and I think he got arrested in Tallahassee. I don't remember. I think that was for drunken disorderly or something. And then he, went out to California, went to UCLA, started film school. He was very passionate about bringing poetry to film as well, and very much an artist. Then he joined the Doors, and right away people started to make a lot of money off of him, presenting him as a rock star, because everyone noticed and could, they recognized his good looks and his charisma and the fact that he could capture an audience. And so he really skyrocketed to that rock star status very quickly. And it really ended up kind of aggravating any of his problems too, because he did drink a lot. He had a lot of deep emotions that he was always trying to reconcile himself to. And, there's the famous story of when he was very young, and he and his family were driving through New Mexico. I think he was 4 or 5, and they went past an accident with a carload of workers who were Native American. And he saw that with a lot of dead men laying around the road. And then later on in life, he would say that the spirit of a shaman who he saw there entered his body at that point. I mean, so he's very mystical as well. But also notorious for having many affairs. Like, just he's the epitome of the rock star with all the groupies, and that he couldn't keep his pants on in public or whatever, right? But there's a whole argument about what really happened. But he was arrested for exposing himself at a concert in which half the audience also started taking off all of their clothes. So you can imagine how that went down. I mean, it was the late 60s, and so he was very much part of that rebellious era. There is a CIA file on him because people were worried, or they were worried, that he was talking about revolutionary ideas and talking about revolution, but not in a political way, just in a Sagittarian way. I mean, he was really the epitome of a Sagittarius. And then, of course, he died young and tragically at the age of 27 in Paris. And that picture up on the right is a bust of him that was in the cemetery. I'm not sure if it's still there, because people still make pilgrimages there and chip away at whatever memorial is there.
Well, that's what my friend, she got me a picture of. She took a picture of that. She went there and she brought it back. So it was there in the 90s. I know that. I mean, I don't know now, obviously, but I have a picture of that. He was hot. He's not dead. They swore he wasn't dead. He's not dead.
Yeah, and I love that too, that there's so many different conspiracies about how he actually just faked his own death, because a French writer that he really liked did that in real life. And so people say, oh yeah, that's what he did. But unfortunately, I don't know. I think unfortunately it was heroin and heart issues due to his drinking. And I mean, another tragic death right around the time when Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin had died at the same age too.
Yeah, but that's like the intensity, the fire, the impulsiveness, and the needing that excitement constantly, and that adrenaline and that rush, and that it's fun as shit. I mean, I was a wild child too, but it's like, you know what I mean? It's short-lived. You can't live like that for a long time. But if you're gonna ride, it's like ride or die, I guess, right? Or something like that. It's like if you're gonna live that way, you got to go for it. And it's kind of like, we just talking about this with the guy who climbed the half dome in California. He freehanded. You know who I'm talking about?
No.
Yosemite, right? The
Yeah.
half dome there. There's a
Yeah.
movie where the climbers, the mountain climbers, rock climbers climb without any equipment. They climb with their hands, and you know the side of that is like flat. It's like I don't know how you could do it, but they did it. And he was young, and he ended up finally dying. But that's the way he wanted to go. You know what I mean? You have that adrenaline, right? You want to live like that on the edge, and so it's either. I mean, they lived their life to the fullest, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Did things on their own terms. So
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. So he's a perfect example of that. And then another kind of rock star of his era is the Marquis de Lafayette, who is the French general who came to the United States or came to America during the Revolution and helped fight the war. And, you know, I forgot about his chart. I think he's a Virgo with moon, yeah, with a moon in Sagittarius. So he definitely has that Sagittarian spirit, but also he has Pluto in Sagittarius. And so he's kind of the embodiment of this Pluto and Sagittarius generation that during the era of the revolution, he was this young aristocrat who is, you know, he followed his passions like Jim Morrison, but where Jim Morrison's went more towards him, like embodying all the passions that he wanted or pursuing his feelings for himself and his art. For Lafayette, it was more about following passions to find the next big cause to join up with and support, like wholeheartedly. So he is an enlightenment guy who would have been born at a time when there were all these new ideas about rights and liberty, and obviously the American Revolution breaks out, and then later the French Revolution. So it was a huge time of change. And he was someone who came from an old family that was very well established and one of the most elite families in France. But that their family was the nobility of the sword, which meant, you know, they are like true knights, that they support the king in military action. And when he heard about the American Revolution, he was intrigued by the idea of fighting for freedom and justice and liberty. And so he left France. He was only 19 years old. He knew Thomas Jefferson. He'd met him when Thomas Jefferson was in France. So he shows up in America and says, okay, I'm here, and what can I do? And George Washington liked him and appointed him a general in the Continental Army. And what's interesting about him is that his father died when he was 2. His father had fought in the French, in the 7 Years' War, or French, what is it called here? French and Indian War. I'm a British historian, so it's 7 Years' War for Britain. But his father had fought in that and died, and George Washington fought in it on the opposite side. So it's really interesting that he came together with George Washington and then joined the army and was fighting for justice here. So then after the American Revolution, he went back to France, and he and Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Man and Citizen, and he helped with the French Revolution. So he is definitely a knight of wands, right? He's initiating action all the time and taking action and putting his money where his mouth is, because he also had a lot of money that he used to advance these different causes. You know, and one thing he did after the French Revolution was he was very opposed to slavery, and he was very upset that it hadn't been eradicated in the American Constitution. And so, you know, he didn't just sit and pout and write letters about it or whatever. The action he took was he bought a plantation and then transferred the people who were enslaved and made them paid laborers instead, so that he could demonstrate how emancipation could happen and that it would work, that it would be financially feasible for people to just start paying people and maintain the plantation as, you know, as a paid as a farm run by paid laborers. So he was always doing things like that. in which he was taking action to further whatever his cause was. So that's why I thought of him for an example of a Knight of Wands.
Yeah, he's a great example. That's a great positive example, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I love it. You want me to move? I mean, do you have any questions you want?
No. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, my questions are just really sort of, if that comes up in a spread where you see the Knight of Wands, I mean, the trick is, well, are you going to be dealing with Jim Morrison, which isn't bad after all? You just want to know what you're expecting, what to expect.
Yeah.
Or are you with Marquis de Lafayette, where you're going to be joining up a cause with him, right? And actually, he left his wife behind in France, so you might be having to sit around while they pursue their pursuit of freedom, right? So
Yeah. I mean, and not to be, it's just, I see a lot of situationships on my channel. So I pull a lot of Jim Morrisons,
well,
and it's from both parties. It's agreed upon. It's what they know they're in. So it's not like a surprise, I see a lot of that, but that's why it's very important to know what your position is when you're doing certain readings. Like, you've got to know where you're placing the actual person, in a sense, so that when that card lands up, it'll be really certain if it's in the person's position. If it's in a mutual energy position and it's in reverse, it's telling you, it's kind of, but it's also, you've got to read the cards around it. You'll pick up the whole energy. I get excited when I see a Knight of Wands. I think Knight of Wands, in my childlike mind, is like hot, here comes Mr. Hot, but it's like, if I see all kinds of other cards around there, same thing with the Knight of Cups, if I can tell if it's just a romantic one night stand. But you've got to understand, I'm picking up the energy of my audience constantly. And that is who is, a lot of people come into tarot are in those kind of situations. So the cards are eventually going to, they just do. It's just the way it works. It's sometimes it's like, I'm like, that's where you got to believe in tarot, because you're like, oh, these stories just keep coming up and people are resonating with it. But the problem that I'm faced with is, where do we go from here? Because people don't want it to be in that position. They don't want it to be there, even though they've allowed it to be there. And you can see that it is. So when I see the Devil with the Knight of Wands, or I see like all this, air energy, these swordsy energy, or I see somebody who's in a third party, who's married, I see situations like that. And I'm just, I keeping it real here in the tarot community. These are some of the things that people are faced with. As tarot readers, we're seeing that constantly. So this isn't like, I'm sitting down and just doing random reads every now and then for somebody who wants just to ask about their future, which I get on my personal readings, which is so different, in some ways. It's like, I can really dive in and see what's going on here. Is it a Jim Morrison, or is it, what's his name again?
Marquis de Lafayette.
De Lafayette, right? And so but the thing is also is that, but for me, it's more of the player type energies, because that's what people are inviting in right now. That's the majority of the situations. So it will show up like that. Can I tell the difference between the two? Absolutely. Usually by all the other cards around the around that card. But that's why I specifically have to know when I'm doing readings. And that's why, honestly, I've been having conversations in my own head about tarot readers out there. All of us across the board have gotten in a habit of saying, you can switch if you want, because we know that we are putting the person's person in one place, the other person or the outcome or what you're asking for in this place. And if it's not what you want to hear, we've got to give you the option to flip, because a lot of people don't want to hear. They want you know what I mean? So they'll flip it back and forth. But to be honest, tarot readers, we put the cards where they are, and it's telling us the story.
Mm-hmm.
And
But I think also, isn't it what you want to hear if you're coming to the reading and you're getting the Knight of Wands? Then you want to hear that the Knight of Wands is going to now settle down with you, right?
yeah,
Or that was okay. Yeah, you get to have this really energetic, charismatic,
yes,
wonderful person, but that they're going to just now suddenly decide they're dedicated to you. But do you see ever a situation in which that can happen?
I do. I see that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I see people's potentials in their relationships a lot, but they are impatient.
Mm.
And that's it's part of it's just like people needing readings every second. They want to know, no, no, now, everything happened now. I can see a reading and it's like somebody is interested, but you might be moving to, it could be a very passionate person, but it's like it'll show one of the other is too impatient or wants to control the situation. And then oftentimes it's really hard. It's really hard because the reality is most of the people that have come on my channel, not all, are dealing with situationships, or dealing with third party situations, or dealing with people they've been dealing with for years, that they've been on and off with and have never gotten a commitment with, but will still wait for a commitment. So those are the ones that I kind of, it's like, what do we do here from now? This is why I got so much into manifesting. What are we going to do here? You've gone this long. You've got a Knight of Wands here. There's a lot of passion there. You guys are, because you'll hear, we've got so much chemistry, but that's not love. That's chemistry. And yet you'll hold on and hang on to these relationships for that long, and it never gets past that stage. And then they break up, come back, break up, come back. And it's like, so that's why I can only do so many of those readings before I'm like, I want the viewer, I want the person getting the reading to understand you've got to make a decision here, what's best for you, and how to manifest this in the way you want it to. Because when you start to manifest a person in towards you, you start to realize your true belief and your true worth. And at that point, it's either two things are going to happen. You're either going to figure out you never really wanted this person, you were holding on because you were afraid to move forward, or you want this person, and now because you stood up to it, your person, actually you're not enabling them anymore, and they decide to come around. So that's how I see it. I wish I could say I see it more the way you want me to, and I would love it seeing, I see more Don Juans come in than I do seeing, like, the real passionate, like this could go somewhere, because it's not really truly what people right now that are getting.
Frankie, are you going out or is it me?
Did I go out?
I don't know if it was you or my internet connection, but I lost you for a second.
Okay. No, I don't know if I did. But yeah, so I don't know how else to answer that. I'm just going off of like what I see. Do I wish I saw the better version more? When I'm doing new love coming in for you.
We're both going out. I think it might just be on my end. So I'll continue to try to talk, even if it's doing that, because I don't see it on YouTube.
Let me see.
But while you're checking that out, let me ask.
We're on.
Okay, good. Yeah, then it's my connection might be a little unstable because I'm in a hotel room, so you never know. But I wanted to point something out too, that a lot of times I think maybe with a Knight of Wands, when I look at Lafayette and Jim Morrison, like the thing that's in common with those two is that there's so much in their character that is about freedom. And that's that Sagittarian energy, right? That you don't want to be pinned down into a traditional relationship. And so one thing I'm thinking of is, Jim Morrison had a couple of very serious relationships, but the one who always stuck with him was Pamela. And in a way, she figured out how how to be in his life, or else it was just the right match for them. Maybe she was a Sagittarius and wanted a lot of freedom as well. So I think a lot of it is learning, some people's characters are also more the type that they want to have a lot of freedom of movement, and they're never going to be able to be tied down. So it's, if you like, I feel like we need to all just say, is this the kind of energy I want in my life? Can I live with this? Instead of always trying to change the people. That's when the frustration comes in, I think.
Well, and that's what I try to do with manifesting. That's why that's my...
All right, now it's freezing on me again.
What it is they really want. What do you want? You've invited a certain type of energy into your life. You okayed it at the beginning, but now you cannot change a person. You knew what you were getting into. And if you're okay with that, can you be okay with that? And that's some of the things that's why manifesting is so important to me, because it really gets you to look at what you really want and what you're inviting in. Because to be honest, a lot of people that come to the readings, that is them as well. They like the fast-paced, exciting, passionate relationships, and then they might fall in love for a second. Maybe they want them to commit, but do they really? Because then they might get what they want and they move on. It can be an addiction too. It can be addiction. So it's both parties here. But if you're caught up in a situation that you're in this type of situation and you've already built the foundation on this, it's going to take some strong self-reflection and working on, is this going to be your person? You can't change somebody. And if you're in a friends with benefits situation and you know that this is what the person wants, sex alone is not going to change that person to commit with you. It's not going to change them. That shows up so much in my readings. And as a reader, it's hard. It's often hard because, you're up here and you're like, what do I say? What do I say? So it's a tough one. The Knight of Wands is a tough one. Because it's just, that kind of relationship has become so popular now that it's easy to get yourself caught up in. And then also for people who are not used to those types of situations, maybe friends with benefits or sleeping with people quickly, or let's see how things go, they will fall deeper in with somebody than the other person will. Or some people might be able to think they can do that, and then they find out the hard way that they can't. And so then they get attached to people that had no intentions to commit. And so this is a topic that I could get deep on, and it's probably not one, to keep going on in this tarot series, but it is what it is. The relationships out there right now, what people are coming to tarot. That's why you can see every tarot reader. The most views we get on our video is how do they feel about us. But yet a lot of people will come on and say, like they're in control of their love life, or they want this, or they can do this, or they can have these several partners, or they can have these open relationships, or they can do these third-party situations because they're okay with it. But yet they're addicted to how do they feel about me, because it's really hard to have these relationships and not get emotionally attached, and you can say it, but you want a commitment. And it doesn't change. Like you can see across the board, you can't change somebody. So am I being Mama Frankie here?
That's a good thing. I think people need to hear that. And, I would love to hear you and other tarot readers have a conversation about this, actually. I mean, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a straight across the board. I mean, it's all of us. I can see it in all the tarot readers that I've collaborated with. We all know the same stories. We all know the same story, and we see the same cards. And that is the number one reason why I have gotten more strict with my readings are manifesting based. Because if I can even plant the seed in somebody or help somebody, a few people get out of the cycles of doing this and see what's going on, it's the best, you know what I mean? I don't know what else to do, because it's disheartening to see somebody you know really cares about somebody, but they want to convince themselves that they can do this, that they're okay with this. And it's going to take stepping in your power and being okay with stopping it, and going after who you really want. I don't know. So I don't want to be Mama Frankie anymore. Let's.
All right. Well, I think that was a great segue to our next one.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Valhalla.
Because
yeah. You know, you become attached to your read. I communicate with my community, you know, a lot. There's a few of us readers, like when I do my super chats, I do my membership, and I go live. I interact with the people. And so you do build some sort of a energetic bond or vibe. You understand. You have to.
Yeah.
And it's a collective energy. It's not just one or two people. So, and that's why when I'm doing these lessons with you, it's like I'm so trying to tap into the energies that you, and how it manifests with the characters you bring in. And then all I can do is kind of keep reflecting on what I'm actually seeing in reality, you know, and what's coming towards me in readings. But
yeah.
All right. So the Knight of Pentacles. All right. This is the one everybody hates seeing. Okay. Right? Can you hear me? All right.
Yeah, I can hear you. Or can you hear me?
Yeah. So everybody hates seeing the Knight of
I'm having internet issues.
Yeah.
But
I can hear
I'm
you.
hoping it will hang in. Okay.
Yeah. Your internet issues you're still coming through on my end. So
good.
So the Knight of Pentacles in the readings that I do, people see the Knight of Pentacles, and of course but here's the other thing. Is he slow? Is she slow? Or are they just not interested? You know, it's like they're very, a Knight of Pentacles is somebody who's very reliable and responsible. We've got here, very grounded, persevere, very patient. They're very focused on material things, the material world. So everything has to be practical and steady, and they take things seriously. It's the same thing we've said about the King of Pentacles. But the Knight of Pentacles is actually more ambitious. So it's not that the Knight of Pentacles is slow. The Knight of Pentacles is not slow. The Knight of Pentacles is very passionate and will work their asses off to get what they want. So it's hard to tell a viewer, if I'm seeing all the cards around, when we see it like the inconsistency, the reverse part, the impatient, inconsistent, or neglectful type of attitude that they're getting from their person, that is a clear sign to me from a earth energy, a pentacle energy. That is a clear sign of disinterest. Because the King of Pentacles, if that comes on the table upright, that says this person will work to get what they want. They will put everything they've got into it to make things work. They want grounded, they want stability, they don't want game playing. And so oftentimes where it falls, I have to kind of take a look at where it falls before I can really interpret it. Because when it comes to now me manifesting and showing somebody, when somebody's saying, why can't I manifest my person in? When I see the Knight of Pentacles, that also shows me you are focused way too much on the 3D circumstance. You cannot take your mind off of what's happening in the 3D world, and you want to control it. You're trying to work too hard to get something that you don't have to work this hard to get. Right. So it can tell me things like that. And it can also tell me that you're after material things. Your heart, I mean, you could be somebody that is, you're driven by somebody's money, financial status. You're driven, and I'm not going to be blunt and say these kind of things like in a reading, but the cards are the cards. And usually a reader will somehow give me a cue that I'm on the right track and I've got the right information that I can gather, and it's saying what it says, and that will hinder why somebody's not moving towards you. So if a person, so when everybody's like, oh, it's the slowest shit, the slowest knight in the deck, well, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. And it's like, to take a look at that reason now is where I try to get people to take a look at. And then that's the most difficult one, I think, for me to get people to reason with, because the Knight of Pentacles will not move. I don't know. It's like they want something stable and serious. So is there any questions? I don't want to keep going on a rant. Is there any questions that you can think of? Oh, you're muted.
I was trying to give it less to deal with because of my connection. Is it that he is slow, won't move? Or, I mean, it's so interesting. I'm looking at the picture that I have here of the knight kneeling and, you know, being that like patient
very
guy.
chivalrous.
But look at the room he's in. It's got all this nice stuff. So, right, the stuff matters to him.
Yes.
And he's not going to move unless it fits into the perfect picture, or she's not going to move unless it fits that perfect, the whole package, the environment, right?
Yes.
Or the environment's not ready, so they're not going to bring anyone in yet.
Yes. And so most of the time I'm hoping it's the one you just said, like they're just not ready. Right. So, but the thing is with that is when I'm seeing the other cards and I'm hearing the story behind it, that this person's been waiting 2 years, 3 years, or, 6 months and all this other stuff, like, there's more to it most of the time, so it's not always that they're just not ready. Do I want it to be that a lot of times? Yes. I mean, and is it that? Yes, it can be that way too. But the truth of the matter is when they are ready, and if you fit into their world, their 3D world, whatever that means to them, that means it, like with this person, it could be, do you fit into my lifestyle? Do you fit into my style of being? Do you fit in? Will you work with my friends? Will you work with my family, my life? Do you make me look good? Do I feel comfortable with you? Can I make a home with you? I mean, things like this. And if they can't fit those pieces in, that's your answer. Or if it could take them a while to figure it out too, which is what a lot of people roll the dice on. And that's where it's like, I'll look at the other cards to see if, is this person worth waiting for? But you can't tell a person if somebody's worth waiting for. I'm not walking their journey. I'm not there. All I can do with the experience I've had now is collect the knowledge and the information the more people tell me their stories behind it when it comes to manifesting, the more I can figure out is this a waste of your time? And the person will know it. Why they stay attached, that's the wound. That's where you'll be attached until you figure out what it is that you need filled, what it is you're doing. And that's why I'm not against, helping people manifest their SP because through tarot, because eventually I'm hoping that it'll get you to see what it is you're trying to fill or what's best for you. But when I see that Knight of Pentacles, though, it's like, to me, they're so yes or no. And if they're not moving, they're not moving. If they're not committing, they're not committing, because their earth is one of the most committed, to the material, to the 3D that
Mm-hmm.
I sound so depressing tonight. Jeez, I sound like
well, but so let's look at the positive side, says the Libra.
Thank you.
If you get a Knight of Pentacles,
if I see a Knight of Pentacles coming in,
have a Knight of Pentacles.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just screamed at you. But if I see a Knight of Pentacles coming in, I get excited.
Yeah.
And if I see a Knight of Pentacles coming in for somebody in new love, I get excited for them. And I'm hoping that, but oftentimes it's funny, and I'm not trying to be a negative again, but I'll see they'll ask for new. They're trying to get over somebody old, somebody in the past, and I'll see a Knight of Pentacles coming towards them. And I'm like, you got somebody good coming towards you, but they really don't want that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're dealing with a quality person in that case, then that's, that's what I've, that's what's always frustrated me about friends who are looking for partners my whole life, right? We've all had that friend who is always going after the Knight of Wands while there's a lovely Knight of
Yes.
Pentacles who's perfectly fine and
Yes.
cute or whatever right there.
Yep.
And it's just so frustrating to watch that the person go through that. And, I've actually had friends who did end up choosing because they finally got into their space of, well, wait, let me think about what's best for me. And then they chose a Knight of Pentacles,
Yeah.
and their life ended up being really great. But but to me, I would think if you see a Knight of Pentacles and you're wondering about something, it tells you right away what kind of energy you're dealing with. So if you can step it up and be something that's in their world, and you can show them that you do love their friends, or you do love who they are, that's like their love languages, all of those earthy, sensual things. And also, and you
But
need
how do
to
you tell
be able
somebody
to
that?
communicate that you resonate with that, right?
It's really hard to tell people that on YouTube.
My camera keeps going out, so I hope it's still going
No,
over.
you're good. You're
But yeah,
good.
it's an opportunity for you to show that you can fit that picture. And
Yeah.
then if they still don't move forward,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I was saying earlier. It's like they're telling you that something's not fitting. Something's
Mhm.
not fitting. And and oftentimes the person who's hearing that has reasons, they'll come back with, but this is why, this is why, this is why, this is why. And it's like, well, I don't know what to say then, because it's like you're not compatible. But for some reason they know they're not compatible and they still want it to work. I mean, they're completely not compatible and they don't want it to work. And on the other side of that, it becomes a control thing again. There we go. I want to change my person. But if you got a person like the Knight of Pentacles and they're not committing to you, you guys are too different, or they, everything we just said. But it's like, if I get a Knight of Pentacles, and also the other thing I wanted to say was, if you're typically somebody who likes a Knight of Wands, that Knight of Pentacles is going to sense it right out the gate. And so that could be you might not know, you might be like, what did I do wrong? I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I really like this Knight of Pentacles, but they are thinking you're the Knight of Wands. You're making them nervous. That's something I bring up too in readings. I'm like, yeah, they're impatient. They're paying attention to you though. So if you're doing shit that you don't want, if you're interested or they're interested in you, a Knight of Pentacles is studying you. Most likely, and they're observing everything you do, or they're checking you out, checking how you act, checking how you're being, checking if they can trust you. And if they're not moving towards you and you haven't had a partnership in the past, that's why they're gathering details. Because if they're going to get into a relationship with you, they're most likely the types to get committed and stay committed and then get stuck in a relationship that they wish they didn't get in. And I don't know, maybe I'm being a little I'm being real with what I'm seeing in the tarot community. And this is the basis of the readings. And so,
yeah, I love it. We need more real in the world.
yeah. And so,
So
I
let's
do
go to the
feel like
example.
yeah, let's get into an example, because I feel like I am taking over with all that.
So my example for this is just it's so funny. I have a different interpretation on it now that after this discussion. I don't know if people remember about, I mean, like maybe 8 years ago, there was a story about Norwood Thomas and Joyce Morris, these two people here. Norwood Thomas I wanted to do just an everyday average person. He fought in World War II. He was a member of the 101st Airborne that were on the beaches, I think, in Normandy. And so he was involved in the D-Day invasion and involved in other very important battles during World War II. But before he went off to those battles, he was a young soldier in England, in London in particular, and he met Joyce Morris, who was this young woman that he was very attracted to. and they dated while he was there. And then he ended up having to go away to war, and they lost touch with each other. And so, the thing about him, about Norwood Thomas, is he is just like this perfect gentleman knight kind of a guy who was honorable, fought in this war. And then after the war, they just ended up going their separate ways. And he always remembered her, but he ended up going and marrying a woman, obviously, because he had a picture in his mind of what kind of life he wanted after the war. And so he went on his way. And I think she was also like a Knight of Pentacles, being realistic. And then after the war, she ended up marrying somebody else, and he ended up getting married, and they had their families. And I'm going to continue to go, even though I can see that it's going in and out. I'm really sorry about my internet connection.
We can hear you fine.
But they were living in this era in which that distance really came about because of the war, and that's nothing they could do anything about. But they each always remembered each other. And so when they were in their 80s, Norwood's wife had died, and his son, or no, actually, and Joyce's husband had died, and I think her son encouraged her to get on Facebook to see whatever happened to that American guy, Norwood Thomas. And they ended up connecting on Facebook in their 80s and 90s.
Oh, wow.
And she lived in Australia. So he was in America. And they, there were stories about this, that he took the big flight to Australia with news crews even following along. They had Skyped before this, right, and reconnected. And then he traveled all the way to Australia, and they were finally reunited. And they stayed in contact then for 6 months. And then eventually Joyce passed away. Even though she was younger, she passed away first. And it was just like this long time love thing that eventually turned out well. So I hope anyone who's getting the Knight of Pentacles isn't thinking, eventually when I'm 90, I'll be with this person. But I just think it's a romantic, it reminds me of Captain America and the woman, right? I don't know if you watched even films, but it's like that finally they got to be together after all this time.
But that is 100. We were talking about 0 to 100. That is the 100 of the Pentacles, though. That it will be that lifelong story.
Yeah. And it's so romantic, and it's refreshing to hear about a different era where something like that could happen, Yeah. So for this one, I only chose these two because they're two different people. And really, I only know as much as what was in the media about this. And it kind of was a big story, and then it went away. And because of the last couple of years, both of them are gone by now. But it's really a neat story. I like it.
I do too. I love sweet stories like that, But that's what the Knight of Pentacles is looking for. That's whether it's a male, female, whether you're a fire sign, and I'm pulling the Knight of Pentacles for you. It's telling me that you, the viewer, if I pull it in your position, you are looking for the Knight of Pentacles, right? You're looking for that, the kind of, this is obviously a long time drastic. You don't want to wait your whole lifetime for this, but that's what it tells me. So if you're looking for that and wanting that, but you're fishing around with the Jim Morrisons,
The problem are the Jim Morrisons, I guess, but
they're just hot. We know. I know they're hot. I mean, what are you gonna do? But at some point, you gotta make a decision, because the hotness is gonna wear off.
Well, and these two, like for the Knight of Pentacles, it's not like they missed out on life. The thing is that they both had their separate relationships, and they had kids and all of that.
Yeah.
And so maybe for a Knight of Pentacles type, your idea of serial monogamy is you spend 50 years with one person, and then you find another person for your end of the life, reunification. So they they definitely were in an era where the relationship and the marriage was more about the whole package and the kind of life that went with it. And that really to me was I was thinking of that Knight of Pentacles energy being what people were kind of expected to do at that time too. So, you know, we don't know whether they were happy in those marriages and stuff, but they did just do what they had to do, and then had their little end of the life sparking romance, you know. So,
and they may not have been happy. It was a traditional type of relationship, but they did the traditional family thing. And you're right, that generation, that's what, you know, they stayed together for their kids. So, and I know a lot of people are nowadays are like, I want to be in a passionate, you know, relationship, and it just doesn't always like relationships have all kinds of components to it though. And so you might want passion if you're coming from a relationship that didn't have any, and then yet you're trying to start a relationship off on that. It dies out eventually. And so is that the type of relationship that can give you the support long term that they did for their families? You know, you have to weigh out what's important to you, and if you know, what you want. And I just want to make it clear again that it's not all Taurus, Virgo, Capricorns that are pentacles, right? This is if we pull a pentacles card for the person I'm reading about, or you, or the person that's coming towards you. It could be like, that's why we always say it could be any sign, but they're showing up as the Knight of Pentacles, or they're showing up as the Knight of Wands, which doesn't necessarily mean that they are, you know, those zodiacs. It's just they're showing up with that energy. It's that intent, that quality, you know. And so I just want to make that clear again. All right. Anything else before I move on? You're muted.
No, there's nothing else.
You're not going out a lot. Like, I know you think you are, but I think because I invited you to my stream, I see you clearly and I hear you clearly. I only seen it glitch maybe once. And so you're not, you haven't messed up once on the internet.
Yeah. So it's just me having to wait for it to catch up so I can hear everything you're saying.
Oh,
but it does seem to help when I turn off the microphone.
Okay.
So.
All right. So the Knight of Swords. Knight of Swords to me, like, I'm like, you know, quick talker, quick-witted, fun guy, fun girl, you know, just really fast talking. Same thing, ambitious. I mean, the Knights are the Knights. When it comes to the readings, though, it's like people are like, it's funny because it's like they want to see the Knight of Wands or the Knight of Cups. They don't want to see the Knight of Pentacles, and they don't really care about the Knight of Swords. They don't. The Knight of Swords just says swift action, swift communication, coming in. They're focused on you. All right. This is a focused person. This is somebody who might be a fast talker. If I see the other cards around it, they might be bullshitting you. I don't know. But they're definitely coming in. They're focused on something. There's always messages coming in with the Knights in general. If it's in reverse, they're bullshitting you. They're lying to you, or you're lying to yourself. It's the same thing with all air to me in reverse in my readings that I'm, you know, for general readings. This is somebody, I know somebody like this in the upright, though. Somebody he's actually an Aquarian. So friggin' smart, so brave. I mean, he's a cop, you know, and he's a genius, absolute genius, and he's fun, and I actually went and he was, when I got my motorcycle license, we were friends. He was dating one of my friends. He was dating a friend of mine who was Taurus, and he was Aquarius. He's a Knight, right? And she just couldn't get him. She couldn't handle it. It was like a Pentacles with the King of Swords. I mean, the Knight of Swords, and like couldn't, you know, it was just two different energies. You have fast paced, a lot of talking, very smart, and very creative too. Very focused. So when I see the Knight of Swords and we're talking about manifesting, you know, I like it. To me, I like it. The person might not care, but to me, it either says, you know, you're really focused on the right things, you know, pay attention, focus on what you're saying. It'll give me some good advice to give you. And it'll be like, you know, all right. And it also tell me to tell you to take risks. Because to me, I always think of the traditional soldier whenever I think of the swords energy. So I do think of military when I think of the swords. So I think of taking risks and being brave. You got to go for it. You got to communicate. You got to speak your truth. You've got to speak your truth into the universe. You got to really and make clear intentions. You got to know exactly what you want, and that'll often, now that I'm saying that, show up when there is some miscommunication in a relationship. Are you being clear with this person what your intentions are? Are you being 100% clear about what your goals are? I mean, things like that. And so if you're dealing with somebody like that, and you're somebody who's showing up as like Knight of Wands in reverse, or you're kind of unfocused, or you're impatient, or anything like that, this person, it could cause an argument. It's just very argumentative energy as well too, because there are people that are, you tend to be right. If it's an upright, usually you've got the facts and you're speaking your truth. If it's not an upright, you're speaking just whatever you want to say to be right. So if there's miscommunication, when I see it in reverse, it's like you guys are just not even communicating. You're not even speaking. You're not even. And then also it tells me, is this what you even want? I mean, you're not even clear about what you want. And as long as you're not clear about what you want, you're going to keep getting a bunch of BS showing up for you. So the swords to me in a reading tell me more, for me to understand what's going on and the dynamic, or what's going on in the reading with the person in general. So it doesn't always tell me necessarily that there's that person coming towards you. It can, but oftentimes it shows up for me as a way to understand what exactly I just said. So I don't know if that makes sense.
I have a question about this, because there have been times where I've drawn the Knight of Swords upright, because I don't really do reversals, but there's times when I've drawn it and it shows me when somebody around me is going to be too rash or impulsive. Yeah. So it seems like upright, that energy can also be impulsive.
Yes. And that's the energetic and the action part. Like, so when I was talking about my friend, I should have probably said that a little bit more. He was very, very fast paced, and he would say shit that would just be like, did you really just say that? And he didn't feel the room. Is just say stuff, and that's why my friend who he was dating, it would drive her nuts. Like, she was like, can he control his tongue, his mouth? It wasn't saying anything bad. He's awesome. But sometimes he would just say things that could be brash or rude, or just to speak too fast before they think, and that can happen upright. More so, so I don't always pull reversals, but I pull a challenge card. So the challenge card tells me what I need to know. And that's what I've been doing lately, just so I don't get caught up in complicated situations. Because if you pull too many reversals, I'll be up here all day long reading into complicated situations with everybody. And it wears you out. So I do one obstacle. And if that, the Knight of Swords in reverse, it can be a very impatient energy. I guess I pin it more with that because it just stays easier. But the upright, yes, it does show that a very passionate. Like I said, all the Knights show me a passionate, ambitious, fiery energy. It doesn't matter if they're air, water. They all have that time period of our lives, like we were saying. They're that age where they're ready to go, overly ambitious and everything. And it's my way. I'm on a mission. So you can get that with the upright. Usually I will clarify out of the most. I usually will clarify any air I get, because when I get the Sword Z, it's always telling me air energy, mental energy, communication. So I want it to be more clear. And sometimes it can just be telling you that you need to speak and take risks. And I get that a lot for myself when I'm afraid to say my truth, because of offending anybody. Remember, I'm publicly speaking in front of everybody. So it's not everybody, obviously, but, good quantity of people. And so I'll get that card when I know I'm not comfortable, that I can't completely express myself, and we're supposed to be able to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I get that card when I know, because I always pull cards for myself weekly, if not sometimes daily. But if I get that on a Sunday before my week starts, I know, all right, I've got to be on my toes this week. I have got to be focused. I've got to know my stuff and speak, like just be in the zone. That's the only way I can explain it.
Yep,
And I
yep,
don't know if that's because I am all air energy, but it tells me I have got to not think too much
yes,
and just be clear-headed and move,
yes.
you know?
And that's funny that you just said that, because that tells me that too. It tells me this isn't the week or the day to lack focus. So it reminds me, and I'll also pull a challenge card too. So I know my own. I know what's going on. So when I get that, it just tells me stay focused on this. Stay focused on what you're doing. It'll remind me to keep staying focused and don't get caught up with what we were talking about earlier. Don't get caught. Stay focused and brave and take action and go forth. Um, you know, so yeah, and like I said, in the readings I do, a lot of people, the reason why oftentimes when I'm doing a reading, to be real with you, I see the the Knight of Swords come in. I just say communication coming in. Here they come. They're focused. They're ready to give you a message, because that's what that's about as general I can get with that, with them. Because they don't want to, a lot of people don't want to go down and hear, if I go down into everything else, it's like it'll get too much into an individual reading if I start
Yeah.
focusing too much on. But if I am doing a personal reading and I get that, it shows me where somebody needs to focus, or where somebody needs to change their focus. Or the biggest one it gives me is when I get people who are manifesting and they can't make a decision. And I tell you right out the gate, you've got to decide what you want. If you don't decide what you want, you're going to create tons of blocks when it comes to your manifestation, because you're telling the universe, yeah, I kind of want this, but I'm not sure. And as long as you don't know if you want it, that's going to keep showing up in your 3D reality. So when you make a clear statement, you have a clear direction. You focus, the universe knows where to go. You'll start seeing things show up for you. So when I see the Knight of Swords, when I'm manifesting with somebody and it's in reverse or something, saying like, you don't even have your intent, you don't even know what your intentions are. What do you want? And you've got to make a decision. Bottom line, you have to know who you are, know what you want, in order for things to start aligning in your life.
I think that's a good time to go to the next slide, because I think that these people are examples of that.
Yes.
So my first Knight of Swords is Serena Williams, because
Yeah.
she is a Libra
Just
and
focus.
she's a knight. I mean, she kind of embodies this energy. And in a lot of ways, she was raised into it because her father took an interest in, finding a sport for Venus and Serena to do when they were young. And he was very disciplined and single-minded in knowing my daughters are going to learn tennis, and that I am going to coach them. I'm going to help support them in any way I can to develop their abilities to the best of everybody's ability. It's like an example of a person on the first slide. I had the prodigies, because that's the only word I could think of for these knights, are people who are very gifted in certain areas and have the discipline to excel. And I mean, when you think of Serena, who has more Grand Slam titles than anybody until just recently, Djokovic caught up with her and they both have 23. But I mean, she had more Grand Slam titles than anyone, male or female. And a lot of it comes from the dedication, just the utter dedication, but also the passion for what she's doing. And I mean, she recently retired, stepped down out of tennis, and she's 41, which is just remarkable that she was playing until she was 41, I think, or 40 or 41. I think she was almost ready to turn 41 when she was in her last tournament and retired. She won a Grand Slam title while 20 weeks pregnant. I mean, she's like an amazing, disciplined person. So she's got that aspect to her, but she is also very much dedicated to family. She's a mother. She is a wife and a daughter, right? Famously that. But she also has these causes that she gets behind and supports with her money and her action. She's just very dedicated to her causes and her own abilities. So that's why I thought of her. And I hope everybody knows who Serena Williams is, because I didn't go too much into the background of her.
Yeah, no, I mean, but that's a great example. Like the examples you've been showing are great examples of what nights are to me, what nights feel like, what we have the potential. We have this potential.
Mm-hmm.
But if we would take on the characteristics of, focused, ambition, driven, going after our passions, trusting and being brave, and that's what they're showing. And she still had children, and she's, like you said, she's done all these things. We have the potential as human beings to be like this. Obviously there are exceptional people, right? But most of us are not using all of our potential, and we have this phase in our life, night phase, that we can really, if we just jumped on it, took inspired action, and just really followed through with our dreams and stuck in, it's like, but people give up on their dreams. And these are nights here that it's like, it's just it's so inspiring. But a lot of people will be like, well, I couldn't. Yes, you can.
Yeah. Well, I saw a comment in the chat just now. Someone was asking what the rest of her placements are, and I think it's about her. She's Taurus rising and a Virgo moon. So she's got a lot of earth energy that allows her to really probably get in there and dedicate herself to the daily grind of being able to excel.
Yep. Yeah.
But then she has the drive to just go out. And I mean, that's the thing you hear over and over again from people who have worked with her, is that nobody trains like her. That her coach said that he'd never trained anybody who was as athletic as her and as focused, because I think it's so much about being a great athlete is harnessing the mental side, is conquering the mental side of it. Not that I would know, Frankie, you would know more about that than I, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I actually thought about that earlier today. I was like, how much mental focus it takes to stay in when you're committed. Because I was doing some lifting today in Pilates, and I was being hard on myself, but my form has changed since when I was in CrossFit, and I was like, but man, it's like, you have to have the dedication I had when I was doing it. My form was great, but as soon as you lose focus, but you have got to be super focused when you're working out. And I do have that dedication when I'm into it, but a lot of people you have to, but it's a mental mind body focus.
Yeah. And to me, it'll be interesting to see what she does, because I watched an interview with her talking about her retirement. And when they said, is there any possibility you might come back? She was just like, well, maybe. Like, she wasn't one of those people who said, no, never. I am now dedicated to my family, or, in any of that. And what I love about it is that you can tell she loves the sport. And that's, I feel like, what always set her apart, and probably also Venus, is that there were a lot of tennis players that played with her who seemed to, like, for example, really an interesting example is Jennifer Capriati. And I'm sorry for going into this, but I just remember that she had that troubled relationship with her father, who really pushed her into playing tennis, and she didn't really love it. And so she would kind of have meltdowns sometimes and lose matches, because you can't pressure people into the discipline that it takes. It's like a combination of really loving it and wanting to dedicate yourself and knowing how to work with your own body, like understanding how to get there.
especially if I'm not into a sport or into like a certain type of thing I'm doing to work out. I mean, obviously I'm not an athlete like that. I mean, you've got me in the wrong category. I just I like to run, and I did CrossFit and yoga and things like that. I'm just a, but the thing is I love it. I've always had it as a part of my life. And once I'm done, if I'm not passionate, I will just sit there and it'll look like I could care less about. I mean, you've got to be in love with what you're doing to be that physically fit, that dedicated, and to win. And if you don't have all three, yeah, like you're not gonna make. I mean, you will make it, but like you said, she had hissy fits.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what I like about Serena too is that she put so much passion into her playing.
Yeah.
I forgot where her I noticed where her Mars was. Is it in Leo? Wait, let me see. Yeah, her Mars is in Leo. That explains a lot, I think. And in the 5th house. So she's going to be extremely passionate about the game of tennis. And what I love, like what's so interesting. Oh, well, anyway, sorry. Let me back up. One of the most fun things about watching her play is always that she's so into the game, and she would always wear her emotions on her sleeve. You could tell if she's having a hard time, like why when her sister died, you could see so much in all the emotions from that coming out in her play. And then also she famously not too long ago got angry at the sidelines coach for a bad call. Do you remember when she got so angry and she smashed her racket? Then the woman said, penalized her in some way. I don't remember what it was, but right away she was just in the zone. Like that to me is Knight of Swords with her words, because she's been known to say things that then later on she has to apologize for. But at that moment, she would not let it go because she didn't cheat. And later on, when she talked about why she wouldn't drop it, she said, well, because I don't want my daughter to think I'm a cheater, that her mom's a cheater. It's like, so it wasn't just about the moment. She's thinking down the line of, you're not going to do that to me and my family too. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's a very passionate king or Knight of Swords, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I think you picked some amazing people today.
Well, I tried.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, is there anybody? Oh, you have.
Yeah, I wanted to, so somebody who I think would be in the same league also would be thinking of someone like Michael Jordan, right? The same sports people. But then I thought, a knight also is that creative type. And we talked about Lord Byron and we talked about Jim Morrison. But then there's also this, like Mozart was an Aquarius. And he's known for having been a child prodigy who he's also a Pluto Sagittarius, for those of you who care about that, like Lafayette. He's from that same generation. And that's a generation of people who really were challenging belief systems and creating new ideas, putting new things out into the world. And he was gifted from childhood. I mean, in a similar way of someone like Serena Williams. Now, he was born with a musical gift. His father was a musician and recognized the way he could capitalize on Mozart's gift. And so I think that's another thing that we see sometimes with a Knight of Swords, that they can be so intellectual or so into what they love that they don't always see the way other people can use them, or might be kind of harnessing onto that and allowing them to go forward while someone is riding along. I mean, to me, that's something I think of with Mozart, because his father put him out there and made money off of him and did tours around Europe to all of the courts because Mozart was so gifted. He wrote his first big composition when he did a composition when he was 5 that his father transcribed. Then when he was 8, he actually wrote his first score of music, and he was always innovating and pushing boundaries and creating new musical styles. And very successful when he was young. The issue is that when he got older and his mother died and then his father eventually died, and it's depicted well in the film Amadeus, if anyone's interested,
I did see
about
that.
his relationship with his father. But he didn't really know how to advocate for himself very well. And so he did run into some financial issues when he was older. It's like child actors, you know, who have that early success and then they go out in the world and they don't always do well. But he did pull it together and started to succeed again. But he still did die pretty young, which you often see in these types of people. I mean, and I think I've heard Mozart, and I know you know about this, so you might be able to say something about it. I know I've heard about Mozart being talked about as a Vata personality type. And that's the type of person who will just burn themselves out because they're so mentally active.
Yes, that's you too. That's you and I. We have a lot of Vata energy. And that was going to bring, it was funny you said that because I do have this deep feel for, well, I think it was Beethoven and I don't know if it was Beethoven, Librat. It was one of them that is where I first learned about the connection to the universe, but I didn't know that's what they were talking about. They would talk about when they were writing and composing, they actually were getting downloads of their, I mean, they were connected and getting downloads. And I remember I was just so inspired. They were just geniuses to me, absolute genius. And then to know that we can tap into that as well too. They were able to tap into that realm, and that's why I always think of the Aquarians or that energy as the talking heads, like they're in their whole heads in the universe. That's where that thought comes from, and they're such geniuses, and it's like even it goes back to what we were talking about, how sometimes they can say things at a brush and not even realize. And it's almost like they're so intelligent, but they can also not connect sometimes with other people that are around them in a interpersonal relationship. They're and the Vata energy, that's Ayurvedic. So we have Vata, Pitta, Kapha energy. And so I'm Pitta. I'm Pitta with Vata. A lot of us are Pitta, I mean, a certain one, but we have Vata imbalance because we've been taught to use our head so much. And then some people are naturally Vata, like they really are. And that's what you're referring to. I think it's that he's so Vata that he's up in the universe. He's out. He can. That's his home. It's his galaxy.
Yeah. Well, listen to this one example that I think shows that. I mean, it's pretty tragic that his wife had a baby pretty much right away, and there was a really they had a lot of chemistry. So I mean, I'd be interested to know more about their charts, right? And she had a baby, but then in those days, you know, you traveled and the wife went with you and you left your baby with a nurse. And so they were out of town and their young child died. And then as they were coming back, you know, he is a composer who is living at a time when your livelihood depends upon whether you get commissions from people who have the money to commission a score, a performance or whatever, a piece of music from you. And so on his way back, as they were going home, he heard Count's house, and I mean, somebody who had money, some aristocrat. And this is on his way home after hearing that his son died. He gets there and they say, oh, we're going to have a party like the next night. We really would love to have a piece of music. And so he sat there and just composed this whole piece of, like a huge piece of music that just came, like he channeled it basically. Right? And then they just performed it the next night, and you know, everybody loved it and thought it was brilliant and innovative and all of that. But that was the kind of ability he had.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to say, is like it was a natural thing. If even Einstein, it was a natural thing for them to be able to do that. But we all can do that. And it's hard. Most people think, you know, we look at geniuses like this and we're like, wow, but we're given the same abilities. We're just learning now how to tap into that and to get into that flow state, into that. But that's what he was doing, channeling. I remember being young and not understanding when I heard that and understanding what it was. And we get little tidbits and seeds planted throughout our lives that lead us to down a certain path. And I just remember only imagine what it would be like to get channeled or channel information stuff. And when you're reading too, it happens, and it happens more and more and more and more. When you allow yourself to tap into that space. Not saying I'm going to be writing any music anytime soon, but
but you do create art, so
I'm,
to an extent what this is like.
I'm excited because when I was younger, I did create art, and I was always half-assing it, and I was always pretty good even half-assing it, but never saw my full potential. I don't know if I ever sent you the sculpture I did.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was half-assed. Like I didn't finish it because they told me what I told you the story. And after being a massage therapist for 12 years and now connecting as much as I can now, I'm excited that one of the phases in my life will be back into art. I shut it down. So when I shut it down, it was like I closed off a part of me, and you can only close off a part of you for so long. And now that I'm going through all this kind of like healing work and been going down this path for a few years, I see it already in my future of doing some sort of sculpting, painting again, and I want to see what I create so bad. I mean, I can't force it though. I have to allow it to unfold the way it's meant to. But I know because it starts to come back into my life by thought, that means it's going to happen. And so I know that I will be back in art at some point with something. And maybe I'll be bringing in messages from the universe through my art.
You might. I mean, you definitely will, because that's what art is, if it's done right. And I wanted to say one other thing about both Serena and Mozart. Like, who knew Serena would, that I would be comparing Serena Williams and Mozart today.
I love it though. It's perfect.
But what's interesting about them is those type of people really, a lot of times, the story is they have difficulty with relationships. But I think these are two examples of people who have found the right partner, who can be grounding in order for them to access that gift that they have.
Yes.
And so if people fear the Knight of Swords, you didn't say they fear them, but people don't love to see it when it comes up.
Yeah. Well, they just don't care. Oh, it's a Knight of Swords, right?
But it's so exciting. I mean, I don't know. This is exciting. Don't you want to be married to a Mozart or have a fling with a Mozart?
Well, that's what I see. When I see the Knight of Swords, I'm like, oh, scientist, science inventor, maybe an Elon Musk. Who knows, right? It could be anything like that. Somebody who's they need grounding, and Vata energy does not have enough Kapha energy. I mean, the school I went to taught a lot about Ayurveda, so I only can tell you what I've learned. I mean, I'm not like this, obviously professional in it, but with that much Vata, you need somebody who has a lot of Kapha, who can keep somebody has to be the solid ground, because he leaves the planet, he connects to all it is and starts creating. He has to be able to do that. And to have somebody to understand that and be the anchor. Like my friend used to call me, I used to get mad too. She'd be like, you're a hot air balloon. I used to get pissed off. I'd be like, what the hell? She's like, well, I don't mean it in a bad way. You're just always, she was like, sometimes I got to pull your string back down and bring you back down to the ground. And I'm like, but I was like, don't call me a hot air. I was like all feisty and pissed off. But she's right.
Being a hot air balloon.
There's nothing. It's just that I would always go out there. I would be talking. I'd be out there. I'd want to go somewhere. I would do something. And she was Taurus, and she was very grounded. And she's very military. And so I was the hot air balloon. But of course, it's not the best thing to be called. But I knew what she meant, even though it also is ditzy too. And but that's what it is. It's Vata energy, and I'm Pitta Vata, so a lot of fire and a lot of air. And it's funny because, think about it, I'm a South Node Gemini, North Node Sagittarius, fire and air. So it's almost like it's all these things to me. This is why I'm learning so much more about all these things piece to our body, everything that's going on, our chart, everything, all areas, even the organs. I mean, it's all a big roadmap. And I just want to know, I want to piece more together. So I was called Godzilla as a baby.
Godzilla.
I know. Who said that to you?
Wow.
I was
I
called Fred Flintstone. I wasn't called Wilma Flintstone either, but my feet are short and chubby, and my toes are short. My feet are cute, by the way. They sound like they look like Flintstone feet, but they don't. I stood like like ballet dancers kind of keep their feet, and my dad said I had sausage links, right? So he would call me
Oh,
Fred Flintstone. I was like, I can't be Wilma. I can't. I gotta be Fred. And
oh
then it
my
was Barney.
gosh.
Yeah. And then it was Barney because Barney was the short one. My
Oh,
mom.
wow.
Yeah.
That's a whole different
Yeah.
episode that we could talk
Oh,
about.
I know. I mean,
Parenting.
he thought he was being a parent. He just thought he was being funny. That's my dad.
Yeah.
That's my dad.
Yeah. I mean, but to do that, and then you've got a daughter with all that water energy,
Yeah.
you might not show it. You might have been Ludmilla,
Oh
whatever,
God.
Lady Death, thinking about sniping behind the scenes
I
there.
know. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um.
Well,
Well,
I really like the nights. I
I do too.
feel like I have a better understanding after going through this whole thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I hope it helps other people as well.
I do too. I feel like we should do a wrap up show at the very end too, wrapping things up. Like, it's like because I know I'm coming from a different, perspective of what I do on YouTube, but that's what people are going to relate to when they're listening to me. But your perspective of the characters are really enlightening because it can really give people an idea of what it really looks like at its full potential. you know and I guess we're trying to show that the cards are not so superficial, when we're getting these. I mean, just because I have to be so general to the public, the cards are deeper than than what you're just seeing, and it's like the nights, to me, I think all of us right now that are even watching tarot, and maybe not all of us, but we're wanting something in our lives. We're wanting to create. You want to create, you got to take that call. You got to go for it. You got to be ambitious. You got to take initiative. You've got to be brave. You got to tap into your passions. You got to set your mind straight. You got to stay focused. You got to get that job done. You got to put the work in. I mean, we're all sort of in Knight's energy right now. The ones that are trying to start their businesses, the ones that are sitting there trying to manifest, they want to make change in their life, right? You can see all the Ace of Pentacles you want on a table, but if you don't make the choice, the Two of Pentacles, and start planning and then put in the work in the three, you're not going to get there. So we're all the Knights, to me, really I think are my favorites out of the court cards. The pages, to me, are the doorway opening, the little messages, the little, creative, playful. I'm always going to think of it like it could be a hobby that turns into something more, things like that. I'm sure you're going to bring a lot more about the pages, though. I mean, you're making me really have to dig a little deeper than just the love readings that we do online. You're making me have to really look at, and I do wish, that more people would understand the cards and would use the cards to their beneficial a lot more. It would be more self-aware and would use it to help them reflect and become
Well,
self-aware.
I mean, in doing this for this show, I've been learning a lot more about how to use the cards myself, right? I've been learning a lot more about how this would apply to me just doing like a daily card pull.
Yeah.
Because I really am the type of person who has to have like the actual real world examples to help me feel what the energy is,
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
we
don't,
talked
did you?
about this though. We talked about this yesterday. Whereas you're coming from uh, an airspace. Remember, we were saying I'm coming from an intuitive place, and I'm trying to open up expansive wise, and you're trying to come down. So we're doing the flip thing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, and it's like I don't need. I can feel into the cards more so, but it is helping me see practical examples though. That's not it is helping me though too.
Mhm. Do you happen to want to pull some cards to see what we might have missed or to sum up what we learned tonight, or like you did last time?
I don't know what I did last time, but I can just I don't know what I did last. Actually, I can just show you kind of what we'll look at the energy of everybody right now, kind of the obstacle and what's coming towards you. What spirit wants you to know, just to see if any of the knights come up. I know the last time it was ironic, but I think you're right. I think the kings did come up for us. But this will show, I suppose. So we've got the moon card. All right. So we are seeing the current energy here. All right. So when I see the moon card talks about there's change in circumstances are changing right now. All right. Things are shifting right now. In the universe, the charts, we talk about the Pluto and all that stuff, the moon, everything's always changing. All right. And the moon card kind of to me is like one of my 50-50 cards. You can either not go with it. You can either fight it with fear, have anxiety, be afraid of what's coming in and hold on to what you are comfortable with, or you can see what's coming in for you. You can face the fears, and you can move forward, bring your dreams into reality, but also kind of go with the flow. Trust your intuition. It's really important to trust your intuition at this time with the moon card. The moon card can show deception, right? But it doesn't mean that somebody's deceiving you. It means you could be deceiving yourself with these false beliefs. So it's about being real with yourself when I see the moon card as well too. It also reminds me to tell you, if you're manifesting, you've got to understand that the moon is shifting constantly. So energies are going to be shifting and circumstances are going to be changing constantly. So you've got to control your emotions during these times. Things are not going to stay perfect for you. Just because you want to get it to point B like this and you want all green lights going, you've got to be comfortable with the red lights that are coming in, the yields, the movements, right? And not overreact. Not overreact every time something shows up as not as quite as you seem, because lots of times most of the things, like 90% of the things, 100% of the things, 90% of things we worry about never come true. But we spend all this time and we create resistance worrying out of fear and anxiety. All right. So the energy of the moon card also says, because it's in the position that would be our position or your position, is just saying there might be some uncertainty right now. Some of you might be faced with some of these fears. Some of you might be having some repressed emotions that may start to come to the surface, right? Or it's being asked, Spirit's asking you to pay attention, reflect, take a look at what's going on underneath that's creating these fears that you're having. It is a card too that says your intuition's really high right now. Pay attention to your dreams. All right. So, tap in and try and see what's going on. The challenge is the 8 of Wands. So things aren't moving fast enough. Things are slowing down right now. You're not getting your wishes. You're not, and this is going back to what you and I were talking about, was like when Pluto went into Aquarius, I started seeing expansion in my mind, all these ideas, everything. We got a taste of what Pluto and Aquarius was going to be. Now we're going back into Pluto and a Capricorn, and we got to clean up a little thing. We're in a retrograde. The 8 of Wands in an obstacle position is a retrograde to me. It's saying shit ain't moving right now, but just because it's not moving doesn't mean nothing's happening. We have the moon card here saying things are always changing. Things are happening behind the scenes that you can't see right now, right? You can't see it, but you're being asked to slow down for a second so you can self-reflect. There's some shit that you got to deal with. And at this point, from listening to David and the Peace Dealer and Rux, and there's a lot of transits happening right now that's really saying, if you want to move to the next phase of, you can either stay back and not make any change in your life, or you can jump on this and start creating and manifesting the life you want. And it's not about logically understanding astrology and tarot and the concepts anymore. It's about walking it, integrating it into your life, and now doing it. All right. If you're going to waste hours of your time trying to learn this shit, why not practice it? Why not believe it and go? All right. And so that's what's telling me, is the 8 of Wands is showing me that things are not moving. Things have slowed down. Maybe a lack of communication. Maybe there's no passion right now. Maybe that's died out. Maybe some of you feel like your passion's died out for something, and you feel kind of confused. I think you said the other day, kind of you and your friend felt like you were your friend said she was lost in space or lost in the ocean or whatever. It's kind of the feeling of the moon, but you're not. You're not, all right? And this is what this is telling me here. You're just here to clean up a little bit, figure out what you want for your future. All right. So let's see what's coming towards you. I've got the World card. So the World card is the next chapter. The World card is the new art. The World card is the next cycle. We're preparing for that part. A huge major accomplishment for all of us. We are going to see a close of a chapter here. In a lot of areas, in ways that we don't even know yet. A lot of us all feel it across the board. There's a lot of things going on in this world right now. But you've got to know who you are, what you want, and you've got to start taking control of your life. Nobody else is going to fix anything for you. You've got to take control of your own narrative, and you've got to create this new world for yourself, right? We're all moving into a new cycle, a new chapter. And so we do have the World card coming in. I do have the Three of Pentacles. Three of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck is collaborations with people, being around connections, connecting with the right people. Even with the Moon card, are things unsettling around you? Are you in a lot of fear and anxiety because you're not even connected to the right people? But when you start building friendships and partnerships with the Three of Pentacles, and you start being around the people who are on the same vibe as you, moving forward, you'll build something together. The Three of Pentacles is people with the same shared goals. So finding people right now who have the same shared goals as you, so that you can be around people that want to help lift you up, lift each other up, and move into this next chapter. Start creating the life you want, and stop, crying about it. I don't know how else to put it. We got to get off the pity pot.
Yeah. I think that those cards perfectly captured the energy of the night to me, because a night, let's think of the old chivalric code idea, right? The best knights from all of those romantic medieval stories were the knights who had a mission, who were on a mission, right? Or they had an idea of a quest.
Yes.
And they didn't just jump out and decide one day, oh, I think I'm going to go do this now, right? They did all that internal work. They were in touch with the intuition of either what are their gifts, like some of the people we've seen today in this. Yeah. They knew what their gifts were, and then they had a code in which they were operating, or some larger communal goal. They weren't just usually doing this on their own, right? That the team is part of. A knight is not a knight alone. A knight is doing a quest for someone else, or a knight is venturing out and bridging worlds, or being the one who's brave enough to go try something else. But they're in touch with who they are, what their gifts are, and then they move towards it. Yes. And to me, it's telling us all kind of,
we're pioneers.
Yeah. But a pioneer, it knows where they're going, right? They know where they're going, and they've done the inner work.
Yeah.
They've cleaned up.
And that's what I'm saying. A lot of the people that come on YouTube in this group, in the community, they logically know this information. They've learned it. They know it. They feel it. But it's about breaking out of the fears and the anxieties, and finally, facing their shadows, doing the work. Mm-hmm. And, like you said, the pioneers, we are kind of pioneers. We have to kind of set a new pathway, set a new direction, and, moving into the new earth. Everybody's, what people somewhat call it. I guess there's different ways to call it, but the new world. We're moving into a new direction. So we need people to stand up and start being brave, and we're not the same. Your skills, your talents are just as important as mine, right? But you're not going to know until you start getting to the bottom of it and the truth of it and being brave. And you're a piece of the puzzle of the universe. And you're not going to find out by saying you're afraid, right? Because we all know that, well, what's fear? What are you afraid of? It's like, that's the old mindset. You've got to break out of that and go for it, because it's the knights that are going to change. It's the knights that are going to change the situation in the world right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
well said.
She doesn't make sense. No.
Nobody's saying that. Is there anyone in the chat thinking that?
No. I just, I guess I was just getting a little teeny kind of feisty tonight. I don't know, but
Well, it's night energy. We have to be feisty.
that's right.
That's
There you
what the
go.
nights are about.
Yeah, yeah. I would say I'm kind of a knight of wandsy, and a knight of swordsy. I'm fire and air, even though I'm a water sign.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
But we could go on about that. So, but I'm not saying anything because
Yeah.
your chart shows that. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, my chart does have I have very little earth. I have all air and fire and water. I have very little earth. The only earth I have is Virgo rising. Why do you think except right now my progressed planets are all in Capricorn. Like I have 3 planets still in Capricorn, Sun, Mercury, and Venus. So
Wow.
that's what's been helping me out for quite a bit of time now. And my Mars is in Sagittarius right now, and my moon's in Virgo. So I do have some earth right now, but that's why I'm always clinging to my Virgo rising. I'm like, God help me. Come on. I'm like fire, water, and air. I am the hardest person to ground. So it's like,
Yeah, and you're all mutable. So, I mean, you're doing what you need to be doing at this time, I think.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'd love your thoughts on that, on my chart. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to do the timestamps. I will have the timestamps up, and I'm going to end this broadcast, guys. Thank you for being here.
thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Bye. Hold on.